wrap it all up. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for joining us tonight for our first candidate forum in the 2024 election cycle. We are a nonprofit advocacy organization focused on protecting the Constitution and the separation of church and state for over a decade. And I'm really excited to be kicking off our 2024 series of candidate forums for school board candidates in Arizona. For those of you who don't know, my background is actually in education. I'm a lifelong educator. I taught middle school and high school, and I sat on my local K-8 district in Central Phoenix from 2012 to 2020. And so over the years, I've kind of seen how there's this rise, right, of the growing threat of white Christian nationalism in our state and in our country. And we're seeing how this political ideology is threatening our local school boards and, threatening our local public schools, generally speaking. We're looking at a hefty deficit as now my tax dollars are paying to fund religious schools. So our local school boards truly are the heart of our democracy, and that's why we do this. I know we have probably some new folks here, and if our mission is something that you care deeply about, we ask that maybe you consider becoming a member of our organization, maybe even becoming a monthly donor, volunteering, or maybe even all three. Also, is there a school district in Arizona that you feel is in danger of being taken over by anti-public school evangelical extremists? Please reach out at info@secularaz.org to let us know. I know that sometimes we focus a lot on what's happening in Maricopa County, but for these events especially, I want to hear from districts all over the state, and especially our rural districts where maybe they don't get a lot of attention. So tonight, we're going to be speaking with candidates for the Peoria Unified School District Governing Board. Now, according to public records, there are 11 candidates who have filed statements of interest, and there will be 3 vacant seats in Peoria. But today, we're going to be speaking with 3 of the candidates who are vying for them. Invitations were sent out to everybody who still had a statement of interest filed with the Maricopa County Superintendent of Schools. Unfortunately, today, Becky Proudfit did notify us she had planned on coming, but had a family medical emergency and unfortunately was unable to join us. So with that, I am going to get back to my screen here, put my chat on if I can maneuver that. Excellent. Oh, good. There's so many people here. Hello, everybody. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Micah Dyer. We're going to go alphabetically, and then we'll alternate each question afterwards. So Micah, why don't you kick it off and just introduce yourself to the people in 2 to 3 minutes.
Wonderful. Well, good evening, everyone. And first, I just want to thank Secular AZ for hosting. Jeannie, thank you for moderating, my fellow candidates for joining, and everyone at home, thank you for watching. My name is Micah Dyer, and I'm really honored to be here today as a candidate for the Peoria Unified School District Governing Board. I'm a lifelong member of this community and a current high school senior within this district, and I'm an aspiring future educator. And I'm deeply committed to fostering positive change within our district. My journey from a student navigating the halls of PUSD to now as a candidate for the PUSD board has really been shaped by a profound belief in the power of student empowerment, community engagement, and education. I'm motivated by the words of Nelson Mandela when he says, "Education is the most powerful weapon which can be used to change the world." And I'm inspired because I know that education is really the great equalizer, and that if every student in our district receives a world-class education, they'll go on to do amazing things in this world. So throughout my time in these past few years, I've served in various leadership roles, including now as the chair of the Peoria Youth Advisory Board. I've served as the youth liaison for the Peoria City Council. I founded a club that's focused on civic engagement at my school. And I'm also the PUSD regional coordinator for a statewide organization focused on civic engagement. And these experiences have provided me with a comprehensive understanding of the needs, but also the potential for our district. And they fueled my passion for advocating for student representation and educational reform. And as I talk throughout the evening, my campaign's really focused on 4 things: student empowerment, community engagement, education enhancement, and ensuring we level the playing field in our district. And I really believe that prioritizing these areas will usher into a new era of student-centered and community-engaged education that empowers every student. So I'm eager to engage with all of you, answer questions that you may have about my candidacy and vision. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Micah. Next we have Melissa Germscheid, right? I said it right?
That is correct.
Excellent.
Hi, hi everyone. My name is Melissa Germscheid. I am a 16-year math and science educator. I was in the Peoria School District for about a decade. Started there as a library paraprofessional. Libraries have a special place in my heart. And then moved on to teach physics and all sorts of other math and science classes at Centennial High School. I left in 2020 and moved to the Tolleson Union High School District, mainly because I wanted to teach freshman physics, give that a try. And I really want to give back to the Peoria community. They did so much for me to kind of grow me as an educator, and also educated my own children K through 12. So I saw all the opportunities that my own children received in Peoria schools, whether it was access to extracurriculars, athletic programs, fabulous art and CTE programs. And I want to make sure that every student in Peoria Unified always has that access. That's why equitable access to programs is one of the main parts of my campaign. As an educator retention is right up there at the top. It's something that I know Peoria needs to do a better job of. And I think that really starts 100% with who is sitting on the school board. And finally, I really want to see that, make sure that we have those family, community, and school partnerships that I felt that my own children benefited from when they were younger. I started to work in Peoria School District because I was there so much as a volunteer that the principal actually called me and said, You might as well get paid to work here." I really truly believe in the power of public schools. I'm a third generation public school educator, and I know that they are the heart of the community. And I want to make sure that that is preserved for years to come. And that's why I'm running.
Great. Thanks so much, Melissa. And last but not least, David Sandoval. Go ahead and introduce yourself, David.
All right. Well, yes, thank you for hosting this forum. I think it's all opportunities are good opportunities for the community, the electorate, to understand who's running for these seats and to be informed and know what options are out there as they go to the polls. So I'm in my 8th year as a board member for Peoria Unified. So ending my 2nd term. So this will be my third term as a board member in PUSD. But to take a quick step back, I mean, I'm deeply rooted in the city of Peoria. My family all grew up in Old Town. Went to Peoria High School, graduated in the 1930s and 40s. My mom's side, they're the early cotton farmers here in the city of Peoria. So my wife's the product of Peoria. She went to Cactus High School. Our kids, both graduated from Park Ridge and then Sunrise Mountain. And we've really lived up here in the northern sector of Peoria since 1997. So deeply rooted in Peoria, has a special place in my heart without question. Just finished my 4th consecutive year as the president of the board during some of its most trying times, if you will. But what I am proud of is some of the accomplishments that we've realized. I mean, when I was first elected, none of our staff got retention dollars. When they signed their LOAs or their LORAs, sorry. So now all of our employee groups get those monies. When they sign their contracts to return in the subsequent year. Yeah. Our new teacher salaries have gone up, over the last few years from 40 to 48, and now we're looking at another increase. But for me, it's I continue to push more the culture in Peoria Unified. From ensuring that our teachers and staff come to work every day feeling inspired, respected, and valued as associates, which all of us know. I mean, we have that type of environment for our employee groups, that absolutely impacts the learning environment for our students. So without question. But for me, I mean, as Micah stated earlier, I've always been a big proponent of student voice. That's why I spend a lot of time at our sites in meetings. It is the most important voice, as it relates to making decisions in this very large district, the 4th largest district in our state, right? Their voice and the voice from the field, meaning our teachers and staff. So for me, I just want to make sure that every student has an equitable opportunity to be successful throughout their years here in Peoria Unified.
Jeannie, unmute.
I got this. This is not the first time I've done this. Sorry. All right, so let's not waste any more time to get into the meat and potatoes. So I'm gonna have my my questions over here. And so and you may have even touched on this a little bit, right? But at what point did you decide, and this is going to go to you first, Melissa, at what point did you decide to run for a spot on the PUSD governing board, and what do you hope to accomplish during your tenure?
I have been talking about this for years. Yeah, in 2017, a group of friends and I actually passed legislation through the Arizona legislature unanimously, and I kind of got the advocacy bug at that point. So I've been thinking about it for years, and of course, teaching in the school district couldn't do it. So as soon as I moved districts in 2020, that was immediately kind of started thinking about it. And that's really where I started thinking about educator retention. It cost the district a lot of money. I served on the bond and override PAC the last couple of years that we had that running, and got to hear just what of a financial impact it has on the district in order to recruit, hire, and train people to come into the district. And with a school district whose budget is tight enough as is, one of the simplest things that we can do to balance that budget is to make sure that people are satisfied in their jobs and want to remain in their jobs in the district. And it also provides a lot of stability for our students and our families to know that, you know, that great teacher that one child had in 6th grade is also going to be there when the second child gets to 6th grade. And so that's big time. That is exactly what I want to do. Is I want to make sure that we are keeping more people in Peoria. And I think beyond budgetary reasons, there's a lot that can be done about working conditions in our schools and at our district office and at transportation and all across the district that can help to make sure that we have a higher retention rate than what is already existing.
So we do have a real quick question here, a follow-up, Melissa. What was the 2017 legislation that Melissa helped pass?
Sure. In 2017, it was SB 1038. And then in 2018, it came back as SB 1051. And it was the Teacher Professional Development Program. On the ADE website, you can look up as Get Set for STEM. It's $2,000 scholarships to go to math, science, or STEM really, and CTE teachers in order to, with the intention that they recertify, because physics teachers and chemistry teachers and calculus teachers are kind of a dying breed in the state.
Okay, well, great. Thank you so much for that. We will go to David Sandoval next. Same question. At what point did you decide to run again for a spot on PUSD? And what do you hope to accomplish during your next term?
Yeah, so no, thank you for that. So for me, I mean, I decided to run again for a few reasons. One is, you know, as everyone probably knows, we just brought in a new superintendent in Dr. Summers. So, you know, having the opportunity to sit in the seat and help guide him through this very large district, I think will put him in a position to be successful. When you take a look at the board members that we currently have on the board, I'm definitely the most tenured, right? So, well, I believe that you know, our board members will be able to certainly provide, you know, different perspectives. You know, as I sit in the seat, I believe from a leadership perspective, understanding the shifts that the district has gone through since 2016, and where you know, we're headed and where we can and what can be, right? You know, it's important for me to continue to sit in the seat. In addition to that, there are a lot of big decisions that we have to make as a district here in the next really year or so. You know, when we take a look at our ADM, you know, while we're the 4th largest district, our ADM and how it's distributed throughout the district, it's mostly in the northern sector, right? So we have schools that are, you know, have less ADM than they used to. So now we're having to take a look at those and, you know, potentially repurposing And then we have our schools in the northern sector. Lake Pleasant has 6 kindergarten sections. I mean, it is just, I mean, we're just growing a ton up in the northern sector. So being a part of that conversation, making sure that we're sensitive, as we make those really tough decisions to, again, potentially repurpose schools. We want to be compassionate and empathetic to those families. I mean, we've got 4 or 5 generations that have gone through, some of our elementaries down in the, in Old Town Peoria. It's so we need to make sure that whatever we do, that it continues to service our students and our families in a way that they deserve. So continue to do something great, for those, for all of our students and the decisions that we make. So that compression, we talked about, teachers' salaries, wages, et cetera. It's a tough conversation. When we talk about funding and how it comes in through, certainly from our the override, right, and how that funds, our salaries, as well as how we use our classroom site funds, et cetera. All of those conversations need to be had to make sure that we do what we can to continue to address compression in our district.
Okay, yeah, it's a problem that so many of our school districts are facing, and the ones who cannot pass the bond or an override struggle with even more. So same question is going to go to you, Micah Dyer. What caused you, what point did you decide to run, and what do you hope to accomplish during your tenure?
Yeah. I decided to run for the Peoria Unified School District Governing Board as a junior in high school, which I think is a really cool thing. Because as a student who's been in this district since kindergarten, I've seen that we have a lot of potential to move forward, but there are very significant challenges that we're facing within Peoria. And so as I've talked to students and teachers as I'm at school every single day, there's several key goals that I hope to accomplish as a board member. We need to put students at the center. We need to implement participatory budgeting within our district. We need to ensure that we have some type of high school advisory board or district student advisory board to ensure that our students are being listened to. Because when I talk to my fellow classmates, they do not believe that their voices are being heard within the decision-making process. I think it's super crucial that we foster partnerships with our community. I hope that, our schools were designed to be community centers and be at the heart of our neighborhoods. And I really want to be able to return to that idea. Similar to what Melissa said, educator retention is a crucial aspect that we need to focus on. And I think it goes back to our students, because I see, they'll go back to their middle school after they're in high school and their teacher is not there. Or they will have a different teacher 3 times throughout the school year. And that impacts our students significantly. And I think one crucial aspect that I hear from our community is we need to ensure that there's equitable funding between our northern schools and our southern schools. Getting back to I first attended a board meeting during my freshman year of high school. And during that meeting, and the reason I went was because I witnessed that my former 7th grade social studies teacher was being insulted and verbally attacked by members of the community and board members because she was teaching about the Black Lives Matter movement in 2021. She opened a conversation to her students to hear the diverse perspectives because she was teaching about real life events that were happening, and she taught that in her social studies class, but she received that backlash, and now unfortunately she's left our district. But she is the reason that I want to be an educator now. She is the reason I want to go back to the classroom and be a 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher. And it is sad that she had to leave. And so from that moment on, I began attending board meetings and I began to advocate for the needs of every single student in our district. Because these experiences and experiencing that situation led me to understand that in order to realize real change in PUSD, we need to usher in a new era of student-centered, community-engaged education. And the only way that we can do that is to elect a student who has experienced the classroom daily. And so, I've attended PUSD since kindergarten, like I said, and I'm an aspiring future educator. And so I believe my perspective is crucial to be able to accomplish those things in my term.
Excellent. I don't necessarily believe in heaven, but if I did, there would be a special place in heaven reserved for 7th grade teachers and kindergarten teachers. Because they're wild. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next question, and that will be David Sandoval next. Okay, so let's see. Are social workers important staff members on a school campus, and why or why not? Mr. Sandoval, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, no, short answer is absolutely. So I think it was a couple weeks ago, I attended the school safety and security conference at the Renaissance, and every individual that spoke and talked about collaboration and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but talked about the village and those involved in um, addressing those shifting needs of our student population, right? They all spoke about social workers being a part of that team. So yeah, it's social workers are invaluable to not only our student success, but also the success of our teachers and staff, site leadership. When you hear from principals, when we were without social workers, they wore that hat as well. And by adding this layer to our team, it absolutely affects their ability to, or impacts their ability to really create strong connections with all their students, and well, understand that they have that support from an individual who is versed at or versed in, addressing some of the those social and emotional needs that our students are experiencing today. I mean, I'm speaking based on data and research, and it is happening, and it's unfortunate. Social media certainly doesn't help. So there's a lot of factors and variables that are out there that are causing the level of angst and anxiety. And I mean, look, we have 36,000 stories in Peoria Unified, and they all come into the classroom. We have our making event and our foster students, right? Making event our homeless kids, and we've got students whose parents may have gone through a divorce, and so there are a lot of I guess issues that opportunities, I should say, are hurdles that our students are going through in their own lives. And they say every student is one caring adult away from being a success story, and a lot of our kids realize that that caring adult in our schools, and our social workers are part of that for sure.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sandoval. Okay, let's go ahead and go to Micah Dyer. Same question. Are social workers important? Why or why not?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with what David said more. I mean, social workers really, they're a vital role in our schools. And I can't tell you enough as a senior in high school who, like school is stressful. As I think everyone in high school says, like high school is stressful. We're trying to figure out, what am I doing next year? Am I going to college, trade school? Am I getting in the workforce? And when I talk to my friends, especially those that are in challenging classes, there's a lot of anxiety that goes with, hey, I have a test next day, but I'm working till 11 p.m. And so there's those ways that a teacher with 35, 40 students in her class cannot have those conversation with their students. And so there's needs to be other staff on campus to ensure that our students' needs are being met at all levels. Our social workers are advocates for our students. They serve as counselors and support systems with the wide variety of challenges that each and every one of our experiences, or each and every one of our students, can experience on a daily basis. And I'm very fortunate that at my high school we have a dedicated social worker who my friends, myself are able to reach out to for support. They provide a safe and a confidential space for us to be able to express our feelings or concerns, because there's so many things that are happening outside of those classroom walls that teachers do not have the capacity to deal with. And I think, like David mentioned as well, is social workers really play a role in addressing kind of broader issues within the school community. They collaborate with our teachers, they collaborate with our admin and other support staff to really, get in the nitty gritty and identify why students might need assistance, or why they might need to develop certain interventions to kind of really address those underlying issues that students might have, if they're getting a bad test grade, or if they're showing up to class and always wanting to go to sleep. And so it's really crucial that we have those people on our campus, to really have those very specified interventions for our students. Um, so yeah, at the end of the day, it is crucial that we have our educators, and that we have our administration, our support staff, and social workers play such a crucial role in ensuring that our students are learning at a high level each and every day.
Yeah, and what you said too, Micah, about the world around kids too. I was actually at the NSBA conference, and there was a really jarring slide there that showed this sharp uptick in the anxiety and depressive symptoms in young people. To the tune of like 50% of our young people are feeling the pressures, not just of what happens in the classroom, but everything that's happening in the wider world around us. All right, so same question to Melissa. Are social workers important staff members on a school campus, and why or why not?
100%. Like as a classroom teacher, obviously I can't tell you specifics, but I mean, I call parents a lot and to tell them that, their child is struggling. And you're exactly right. Anxiety is an epidemic amongst, I won't even say teenagers, amongst young people in the United States right now, probably worldwide. And so calling parents and telling them, hey, your kiddo's struggling. I would love to, give them a refer them to someone on campus who can help them. We have a social worker. Would you be okay with that? And I've never had a parent say no, because, if their child is struggling, if a child is struggling with personal, emotional, socializing issues, they can't concentrate on the academic part. And so I can't get them to teach physics. They're not learning physics. If they are struggling with issues that are going on with other kids on campus, with issues that are going on at home, with thoughts in their head that they just don't know how to deal with. And like it or not, the adult problems in the outside world, they come into campus and influence our kids. They're seeing, I always grew up watching, my kids grew up with me watching the evening news. And now I realize, they were probably internalizing a lot of what they're hearing. And it's just not something that I would probably want them to hear. An elementary school age kid, there's stuff that goes on the news that might not be the best influence for them, but our kids are talking about it at school. I routinely hear my kids talk about things that they saw on the news, and they are upset, they are frantic, they are worried about the world around them. So having a social worker on campus, someone who is actually trained to deal with students' emotions and social issues, I am not. I've been a teacher for 16 years. I've never had that type of training. So and I will be the first to admit that I'm not the greatest with emotional issues. So when my students are struggling, I want to send them to someone who has more training than I do. That's not my place. And having someone who can then even call parents right there. I can't call parents and discuss these issues while the students are in my classroom. So having someone who can sit down with the kids, call their parents right then and there, get them involved, find solutions so that when they come back to my class, they can do more academic learning is beyond valuable. And social workers should always be a part of Peoria schools.
All right, excellent. All right. I'm going to go ahead. Anonymous attendee has a question that I would have asked anyway. So let's just go ahead and ask it. And their question is slightly different than mine. And it's going to go to, okay, I'm going to get this right. It's going to go to Micah first. Should the district go back to offering an opt-in sex education program for our 5th grade and up students? And that goes to you, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I was having a discussion with some of my teachers earlier because within the Peoria Unified School District, sex education curriculum is not an option for our students. But I am a student and at a school that offers the International Baccalaureate curriculum. And within that curriculum, a reproductive health unit is required. And so those 7 students, including myself in that classroom, are the only students within the PUSD district that receive a sex education curriculum. And so I kind of have a unique opportunity of being in that space. So I think it is crucial. Sex education I think is vital for providing students with the knowledge and skills that they need to really navigate the complex world that we live in. And I think it's crucial. You mentioned like a 5th and 6th grade classroom, that this instruction is tailored to the developmental stage of students and that meets kind of the established guidelines that we can provide and the necessary tools to make informed decisions and kind of really foster a culture of respect. And I think it's essential that we equip these students with this information about reproductive health, about consent, and about healthy relationships. Because this is really crucial that when we have a situation in a high school where a teacher might be soliciting different things from students, or where we have these inappropriate situations happening to our high school students, that they are prepared and that they were given the information in elementary school on what consent is, on that I can say no, and that I have control over my own body and what I decide to do. So I really do think it's crucial, but I think a really crucial part of it too is that parents should be engaged partners in this, and their input and their perspectives should be really valued in the development of this curriculum. And I think they play a really crucial role in promoting, the well-being and should be partners with us and with board members who are advocating for this. And because I think it is crucial, and I think we've seen benefits of sex education curriculum. So yes, I think we should reinstitute it within our district.
Thank you. There is one comment here that I'll read. I was shocked to learn that PUSD doesn't offer sex education. I requested it for my kids in JH. I don't know what that means, but I'm sure it's probably like a school, and was informed it is not an option here. Wow. Yeah, that's an interesting choice. A very interesting choice. Okay. So next we have Melissa. Same question. Should the district go back to offering an opt-in sex education program for our 6th or 5th and up students?
I'm a science teacher. Accurate science education and comprehensive sex education go hand in hand. Honestly, Micah talked about reproductive health. We should always be teaching students what's happening to their bodies, and truly how to keep themselves healthy. And sex education goes right with that. I overhear conversations amongst my high school students all the time that tell me that they didn't have comprehensive sex ed either. And it's really hard not to interject. We can't interject to tell them that they're putting their safety, they're putting their health, they're putting their future health at risk for things that should be taught in schools. Parents should have the option to ask somebody to do that, because as a parent, I say those things to my kids, and when they were 5th grade, they're like, "Oh, mom, no." So having someone else sit down and explain to them what's happening in their body, what puberty is, exactly like Micah said, what consent is. We have a big problem amongst teenagers with dating abuse, and they don't necessarily realize it's happening. I've had students who are the victim who I've had to pull aside and go, "Look, we need to go talk to somebody else to let them know what exactly is going on, and you need to contact your parents." And I've had students who are the perpetrators who then I've had to, and they don't understand because they're following the lead of what they see in the media, or sometimes even what they see at home. And so having an outside ability for students to learn about their reproductive health, about consent, about what is safe, and about what the decisions they make as teenagers can impact their health for the rest of their life is crucial. I'm just thinking about some of the students I've had over the years. They're going to go into their 20s, 30s, 40s, and look back as teenagers and go, "Wow, if I would have only known not to do XYZ, then I wouldn't have the issues that I do now." And that can be everything from teen pregnancy to STIs. Our students need to have this information. Knowledge is power, and having that knowledge can empower them for the rest of their education, for the rest of their life.
And finally, for you, David Sandoval, same question. Should the district go back to offering an opt-in sex education program for our 5th and up students?
Yeah, so everything that both Micah and Melissa just said, without question, I would absolutely support bringing sex ed back into the district for a few reasons. Melissa talked about the science behind it, right? When we talk about student success, there are a lot of hormonal changes going on during those years, right? And we talked about the multiple stories throughout the district. Not everybody has that that support at home, right, to have those types of conversations. So being able to have those conversations, at school are critical. The consent aspect of this opportunity, I think is very important. But yeah, I think wherever we can integrate programming curriculum that puts our students in a prepared state to be successful throughout the district, emotionally, hormonally, etc. Giving them that equitable opportunity to be successful, I think is absolutely important. And I'd agree with Micah from a parental perspective. Let's have multiple lenses in the conversation and figure out what this looks like. And an opt-in option, I think is absolutely something that I would support without question.
Right on. And I think that might even be the law in Arizona. So I have a quick follow-up. If you want to just maybe, let's just do a quick yes or no on this one. Because the anonymous attendee is also asking, do you think Bloom 365 should be offered again for the students? And since this one's a follow-up, how about if I just start back with Micah? What do you think, Micah? Bloom 365, should it be offered again for the students?
Yes, they're an amazing organization.
Okay. Melissa.
Oh, absolutely. If only for the dating abuse prevention.
And David.
Yes, absolutely. I think, they have a wide range of curriculum. I think they have the experience. They're on our multiple districts. So, when we take a look at the stories again, Peoria Unified has its own story, and what makes sense based on the program that they have to integrate into the district. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And I recognize that name. I may have worked in districts where we had Bloom 365, but it's definitely, I can almost even picture the logo for it and everything. So it's definitely something that I've heard of. Marty is asking, so Bloom 365 is no more. And from what I understand, in the Peoria Unified School District, that program was rejected. I don't know when, I don't know who was in charge of the board, but we've now confirmed that it is no longer being used by the district, unfortunately, for some reason.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I mean, it was it was actually a district decision, because they were looking at other partners to fill, those voids, if you will. So it's a district decision to go with other partners versus Bloom 365. This was probably, I don't know, maybe a couple years ago when Dr. Reynolds was still superintendent.
Okay. So, and again, for people who are in the audience, or if you're going to be watching this later on, like, there's another reason why it could be really rewarding to get involved at the committee level with your school district. If you're interested in learning more about curriculum that's being adopted in your district, no matter which district it is in Arizona, I know that Scottsdale Unified just put out the call for a curriculum committee to consider bringing comprehensive sex ed to that district. So this is just my plug for our public schools. It's difficult to get folks to sit on the committee, and you certainly want to have pro-public education people on those committees. So it would be worth your while, perhaps, to take a look and see what committees are going to be assembling, if they're looking at curriculum in your district, if they have a book review committee, even. Like, those are things where we definitely probably want to have folks sitting at the table, so we know that it's not being driven by the fringe members. All right. Next question. We're gonna change gears just a little bit, and I believe I'm gonna go with Melissa first for this question, right? Okay. Okay. So question is, what role should standardized testing play in driving school programming and policies?
Ooh, lovely question, because I just got done with proctoring some standardized testing today. So I think that standardized testing is kind of like a thermometer. You know, we can use it to kind of gauge where things are in the district. I think it's more important for us to look at the growth of students. So specifically looking at, you know, if I look at a first grade class and I'm looking at how they test, and then I test them next year in second grade, I want to see that they're making some growth. Um, and to be able to use that to see not only where the strengths are, but where there are those opportunities for some learning. Maybe there's something that is missing, because we know that kids change over the years and different things have become more of a priority. But I think it can be used to kind of drive how things could change to improve education for students as they go through school. So not a punitive measure, but really to look at it and help students become both better learners. And I know I hate to say it, but they need to become better testers, because in life you're always going to have something, whether it's you're going to take a driving test or you have to certify something as part of your job, you know, teaching them those skills. And maybe sometimes it's just learning that. But I think that we really have to, as educators, look at how students are progressing through school. And, you know, it doesn't mean completely throwing out the curriculum, but maybe there's things that can be tweaked and changed throughout the years to kind of help boost up kids to where they want to be. So, for example, if there's something particular within their math skills that's not that's not helpful for them. A lot of students struggle with, say, things like word problems. That seems to be one of those areas, and when the kids get to that point, you know, they really, really struggle with that. And so as educators know that, then they know, oh, I have to do more practice with word problems. If the district knows that, then they should be looking for resources for those teachers to help teach kids word problems. And as district board members should absolutely be using that to say, okay, well, we need to give educators more support in these particular areas and to help those kids along. And so it really shouldn't be that standardized tests are the end all be all, but they can help kind of gauge where we can do a little bit better job and make sure that students are reaching their full potential. It says not every kid's going to get 100% of the test. These tests are not designed to ever get 100%, and we should be looking for growth.
Excellent. I was one of those weird kids who liked word problems because I always did better in English than math. So the words made it make sense for me. Same question to David Sandoval. So the question is, what role should standardized testing play in driving school programming and policies?
Yeah, thank you. I was one of those kids who didn't like testing. I could be totally prepared and test time. Anyway, that said, look, I agree with what Melissa stated. It is one of the ways that we can determine student success and growth, for that matter. You know, it could lead the district teachers and staff down a path to determine why a student, you know, went from maybe an A to a C, or you know, why a student is struggling, right? It's just one of the many ways. I mean, we just talked about just all the factors that impact a student's ability to be successful in school. And there are many that are outside of testing. And I think standardized testing is somewhat of a barometer. It does allow us to determine, yes, efficacy and proficiency, you know, in a certain area, but it also does provide a somewhat of a red flag as well, right? You know, if a student is struggling. So for me, its role is that it's part of the entire picture. You know, and that's why we talked about our social workers and all the other wraparound services and teams that are involved in student success in our district, which are critical. They're all needed. So it's part of that evaluation to determine, how we best meet a student where they are, and then let's go and make sure that they're successful.
Well, I must say, I really like this whole child approach that y'all seem to have, especially at a time where somehow having a whole child approach is seen as like some kind of strange boogeyman. So thank you for like not seeing our kids as like these automatons that just show up without any kind of problems. Yeah, it's refreshing. Micah, same question to you. What role should standardized testing play in driving school programming and policies?
Yeah, so I agree with different bits and pieces of what both Melissa and David said. I think at the end of the day, there really needs to be a push towards moving away from high stakes testing, which I know at the end of the day is an issue that our legislature has to work with. So I think there's different kind of ways and approaches that we can handle it within the classroom and within the district. I think like both Melissa and David said, I myself am not a great tester. I didn't get a great score on the ACT. But I think there's so many different ways that I and my other classmates excel in the classroom that might not reflect itself in an A. And so I think it's, I'll kind of avoid doing all the benefits. I think it's such a crucial part, and it's a little piece in identifying how we can get data for whether our students are growing. But I think it's really important to kind of recognize the limitations that we have in standardized testing, because they really only focus on a very narrow range of subjects and skills. And we're overlooking those aspects of education that are so crucial, in my opinion, such as critical thinking, creativity, and that kind of social emotional aspect. And I standardized testing may not really accurately reflect kind of the diverse backgrounds or the experiences or abilities of all of our different students. And so I think at the end of the day, it kind of leads to inequities in kind of our educational outcomes. But I think that the district does a good job at kind of taking standardized testing as one of several measures to assess student learning and inform kind of how we can do decision making within the education system. So they really should stay as formative assessments and different tasks, and stay as kind of that little puzzle piece within the whole picture. But when I'm in the classroom and when I talk with my other students, there's so much anxiety that they have when they're informed that they have a test at the end of the week, or when they know that the ACT is starting to come up and all the adults in the room have that face that they're like, we need to get them prepared. Because we do. I mean, our schools, their funding is based off of, their ACT scores and all these different things. So it is crucial that because that's the way the system is set up. But I think there's needs to be different approaches on ensuring that our students are not stressing so much on ensuring that they're getting straight A's in sixth grade. Because I was that kid, and I went through sixth and seventh and eighth grade who stressed and stayed up late and studied. And I look back and I'm like, I don't know if I needed to do that. So I think it's really, looking at, like you said, the whole child, and ensuring that each and every one of our students understands that getting a C is not the end of the world. And that there's so many other ways that we can track on whether you're a good student.
Sorry about that. Okay, so that was 3. All right, next question. And for those of you who are here, we're going to open it up to audience questions. So if there is a question you would like to ask, please, by all means, put it into the chat or into the Q&A. And here's another one where I do feel like you've kind of touched on a little bit in some of the questions we've asked. But what, in your opinion, and looks like we're going to be starting with David Sandoval on this question, but what, in your opinion, is the biggest challenge facing your district, and how do you plan to address it? It's hard to pick just one.
Yeah, you're right. So Peoria Unified, I think right now the biggest challenge that we have is, so from a overall ADM perspective, and meaning how it's distributed today versus, even when I was first elected in 2016. I think the biggest challenge right now is how we as a district, and I'll take a quick step back, and we've always continued to problem solve, right, with the dollars that we have to, uplift our aging schools in Old Town Peoria, and how do we add another, building that might have 6 classrooms at a Liberty High School to lessen the impact of its growth, right, and the number of students that we have in the classroom there. Right now, that's a challenge. I think the challenge goes, so one is the ability to, you know, build other sites in the northern sector, which is where our growth is, both from a elementary perspective as well as high school. And I think the challenge there is, and I am excited about some of the things that the district is doing to make connections with the community, to inform them of just the greatness that comes out of the classrooms in Peoria Unified, and the excellence that exists with all of our associates, meaning our employee groups, making those connections, but in a frequent basis, right? So not just more asking for their yes vote on a bond and or override, but creating those relationships. So when it comes down to it, they understand the importance of investing in our youth, investing in those human beings that are inspiring. And so that's how I think a challenge is, one, making those strong connections with some of the communities in the district where we do have some retirement communities, right? Westbrook Village, Cortabella, homes that don't have kids, but still benefit from a thriving school district, right? And I think that's the message that needs to be continue to be had with those households. And then how our messaging is variable or varies based on who we're talking to. I mean, we have our the different life stages throughout the district, but I think right now our biggest challenge is growth and sustaining our schools in Old Town in a way that our students deserve, and the way that Peoria always has. But so that's the biggest challenge. And then, again, going into our employee groups and making sure that they feel valued and respected. But I'll stop there.
Okay. It's interesting to try to figure out how to sell the importance of our public schools to people who maybe don't have children, or their children have already gone through the public schools. So it's one of those things you have to keep on doing. So same question this time is going to go to Micah Dyer. And that question is, what's the biggest challenge facing your district and how do you plan to address it?
Yeah, I think similar to David, the biggest challenge is leveling the playing field between our northern and southern schools. I think we kind of need to look at how we can more equitably fund our northern and southern schools, and ensure that all of our students have access to the same resources and opportunities. And I don't think, no matter where you attend school in our district, you should be receiving the same world-class education. And I'm not sure we're at that at the moment. I like to share a story of, I traveled to a bunch of different schools with members of the Peoria Youth Advisory Board, and there was a young lady who is a freshman at Peoria High School, and we went to different schools within the northern sector of our district, and she stood in front of the school and looked at it and said, "This looks, just newer, fresher, and better than my high school." And it was an elementary school. She looked and saw, and it might be simple things, but I think students put that in the back of their head, and it affects them. They say, this school has turf field, this school has 2 bathrooms on their football field, or this stands aren't falling apart like the ones at my high school, and we have to do this little trick every football game. And those are really real realities that our students and staff are seeing within our schools. Like David said, our northern population is booming. We need new infrastructure. But then I go to a school that was built in the late 1970s, and there's failing infrastructure. We have a bathroom that is pretty much closed 24/7 because the plumbing does not work right. And so these are things that students are noticing. But we cannot do that without passing a bond, and we cannot do that without passing an override. So that's what I hear when I knock doors, and that's what I hear from our community. One other crucial thing that I hear from people within the community is that we need to stop having conversations on culture war issues. And we need to return the focus to the concerns of students and staff. I do not like knocking on a door and the only thing that person knows about Peoria Unified is something that they heard in the news. They heard we're having a governing board member sue our district. I want to hear that. I want them to know the positive things that are happening. But unfortunately, we're just not there right now. And when we're talking about, that's why I started attending governing board meetings, is because the people in the room weren't really talking about what students were concerned about. Students are concerned about teachers leaving left and right for a multitude of reasons, whether it be low pay, inadequate support, or the division on the board. Students are concerned because a number of our Title I campuses are not receiving the services they require to meet their needs. Students are concerned because there's differences in our northern and our southern campuses. So these are the challenges that our students are facing, and I think it's important that we resolve them.
Excellent. Okay. Next, last person, same question, Melissa Gurmscheid. I've got this, don't worry. What is the biggest challenge facing your district and how do you plan to address it?
Well, we can't do the business of educating our students if there are not people in the buildings to educate our students. If we don't have bus drivers to get them to school, food service to serve them lunch, the office personnel who keep the entire school running, if we don't have teachers, if we don't have principals, if we don't have library parapros in our libraries to make sure that there are always wonderful books for them to read. And Peoria does pay less than neighboring districts. And fortunately, there have been some efforts made in order to fix those particular things. And there's one thing though, with that budget committee, they don't address working conditions. And I really think that one big thing I would do on the board is put forth a meet and confer policy. Like, we need to have the ability for employee groups to negotiate working conditions within the district. And I think that would go a really long way to making sure that people stay. Because when your voice is heard, it feels like you have a voice in what is going on. And one of the best sayings is teachers' working conditions are student learning conditions. So if we make sure that working conditions are the best possible for fantastic community and academic growth, then the student learning conditions are going to be for fantastic community and academic growth. So we need to make sure that happens. And a meet and confer policy would cost the district nothing. It would cost the district nothing. It might cost some time to sit down with people who are representing employee groups and make sure that they have what they need to do their jobs. And if that results in people feeling that their voices are being heard, that coming to work is more enjoyable, then that means more people are going to stay in the district. And that means we're not going to have perpetually open classrooms, long-term subs, bus routes shut down, and perpetually understaffed food service, which if you've ever gone through a elementary school line at lunch, those people are the best people on the planet, sitting there with the patience that they have to make sure that all of our kids have the nutrition that they need in order to come back after lunch and be ready to learn. So, that's what I would do, like, early on, is get that meet and confer policy, that H policy on the books, because it costs us nothing and it goes a long way into making sure that people will stay in the district.
Awesome. I have to comment, like, this, the three of you bring such, I think, rich, diverse perspectives, and it's just so refreshing, especially when, we see sometimes how the narrative is being taken over. So it's really nice to hear the diversity of thought between the three of you candidates. And I, for one, am really grateful for all of you for stepping up. All right. Now, this is the one that our members care about the most. We are going to take it back to the beginning here with Micah Dyer, and then I think we'll probably be at the point where we're going to open it up to some audience questions. So this question, Micah Dyer, is what role, if any, should religion play in our public schools?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So religion in public schools, there's kind of it's crucial that we uphold religious freedom, but that we maintain a very clear separation between faith and public education. Public schools serve a diverse student population. And it's actually just even answering this question, I think back to I had no idea what Ramadan was before I went to the high school I went to now. And how beautiful is it that I get to go to school with these people who like have lived such different lives, and I get to learn about these different cultures, and it's just beautiful. So that's a little aside, but I think publics, like I said, they serve diverse populations and various religious beliefs and different backgrounds, and not everyone, adheres to the same faith or any faith at all. And so it's really crucial that public schools remain neutral and inclusive spaces where all students are feeling respected and valued, regardless of whatever religious affiliation they may subscribe to. Um, Public schools should not promote or endorse any specific religious belief. I think that that's common sense. But what they can do, and what I think is crucial, is that we provide objective and academic education about various religions. And that's a really amazing part. Sixth grade is kind of where we learned about world religions, and we went back and we talked about Hinduism and Buddhism, and then we went to the Islamic religions and we learned about all of the different cultures. And I think that is such a crucial part of what education is I grew up in Peoria, Arizona. I do not know the experiences of someone all the way on the other side of the world that is, subscribing to Buddhism. And it's beautiful that I get a little hint of what that is. And so I think this approach really just allows our students to develop a broader understanding of all those different faith traditions, and it fosters tolerance and respect for the diversity of religions that we have in the United States. And I think also a really crucial part is that our schools should really do the best that they can to accommodate for students' different religious practices to the extent possible, ensuring that no student feels marginalized or excluded because of their faith. I think often that we may face that in some situations where, there's a common religion and where we live, and that some of those students who may subscribe to other religions might feel marginalized or excluded because of the faith that they subscribe to. So it's that balance, religious freedom, and then upholding that key neutrality in public education.
Okay. So Melissa Gurmscheid, same question to you. What role, if any, should religion play in public schools?
I believe that religion should be a topic in the social studies textbooks, period. That's it. I mean, I'm one of those teachers, my students may call me the Grinch because I don't decorate for Christmas. Why? Because Christmas is a Christian holiday and I teach in a public school. And so I don't subscribe to any of that, because if I do that, that means that I am automatically excluding kids who don't celebrate that holiday. If I tell kids, if I call it Christmas break and not winter break, I am automatically excluding kids who don't celebrate that holiday. I feel that as an educator, my students should never know if I have faith or what that faith is at all. And I think as a school board member, that goes to show that should be the same case, that it should never, people should not know the religion, the faith, the beliefs of a school board member. That's not what they're there for. We don't have to read a religious text in order to be a good person. And so sitting up in the dais should be able to make decisions based on logic, based on data, and not bring in those personal beliefs into it. Because it is guaranteed that in our lives, we're making decisions for a public school, decisions that are good for 36,000 students across a very diverse district. Then once in a while, those decisions are not going to be part of a personal belief system. And so if you're always making decisions based on some personal belief system, you're going to automatically you're not going to do what's best for all 36,000 students. And so I think in a public school, it should not be a part, except for teaching students about religions when, like Micah said, in their 5th, 6th grade, 7th grade, wherever that means. I don't teach social studies, but I think that's it. That's where religion should have a part in public schools as an academic approach.
Right on. Same question to you, David Sandoval. What role, if any, should religion play in our public schools?
Yeah, so I'm a man of faith, and I think everything that Melissa and Micah just stated is right. Absolutely honor all religions. You know, we, as a public education organization, Peoria Unified, our doors are open to all. And when we sit up there at the dais as a governing board, it is important to lead with objectivity and always be curious, without judgment, and also be informed, based on visiting sites and data, etc. The decisions that we make up there, when we're up there at the dais, it's not about us, right? It is about 36,000 young lives and 4,000 associates, by the way, and their families. And you multiply that across a average household size, and we're serving upwards of 200,000 human lives in the Peoria Unified School District who connect differently spiritually. So that said, like anything else, I'll keep it simple. Everybody comes to us with a different story. We honor that. We serve them in a way that we meet them where they are and ensure that they have a equitable opportunity to be successful in our district.
Absolutely. I mean, your motto is every student every day prepared to shape tomorrow. It doesn't say every student every day, terms and conditions apply. So thank you for that. There is a follow-up question here. And that follow-up is, should Christian clubs be allowed as school-sponsored clubs on high school campuses? Interesting question. Let's take 2 minutes, Lindsay, for this one. It's a meaty question, but we're going to go ahead and start with Melissa. So should Christian clubs, and I think with this, this person is, there's a good news clubs, which are Christian clubs, and they're clubs that should be happening after school. So just to clarify for people who maybe don't know, there is such type of clubs. They're legally supposed to happen after school hours, and they're legally supposed to be started by students. So the question again is, should Christian clubs be allowed as school-sponsored clubs on high school campuses?
Yeah, I think this one is a slippery slope. And for many reasons. One, school sponsored, you're automatically going to have an adult in the room. And as a parent, it kind of worries me that I would have somebody sharing their faith with my kid when I'm not in the room and I don't maybe know what the agenda is. That worries me a little bit. I think that goes on, we hear about parents' rights all the time. And parents have the right to know what their kids are learning at school, and we can access, I can look at the Peoria curriculum anytime that I want and kind of see what they're learning. But I think that those clubs kind of hit that point where you could have someone teaching kids something that parents don't want. All parents have the ability to say no. I think, yeah, they do have to legally be there. I think the better option would be to have those particular clubs at churches. If churches want to offer those particular things, that's a great place for those. But I really, as an educator, I worry about my fellow educators that sign up to sponsor things like that, because I think that it's too easy to fall into the trap of, now that you're that coach who's praying with their players before games, or you're that teacher who's sharing their faith with a kid, a faith that might go against what their parents believe. And so I think it's a really tricky situation, and legally they have to be there, but that's a really tough one. I think that's where ultimately parents need to be educated exactly what's being offered at the school. I know that sometimes goes the opposite way with different clubs, but this is one of those places where all parents have rights as well.
All right, I was listening to your answers so intently that I missed the 10-second warning. Okay, that means that David Sandoval, same question to you. Should Christian clubs be allowed as school-sponsored clubs on high school campuses?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably be repetitive and kind of make a similar statement that I did to the last question. We never want any students to feel the different just because they're not a particular religion, right, on our sites. And I mean, these clubs, certainly can take place at homes, off site, but I don't know if the question was in and around school sponsored, right? And I do agree it could be a situation where we could potentially make others feel different just because they're not a particular religion. So at the moment, I mean, school sponsored, I don't know that's that in my mind, we talk about every student every day. It could be a situation where we begin to again make some of our students who are of a different religion feel different. We never want that to be throughout Peoria Unified. So yeah, again, clubs off campus, great. Families want to do that, that's awesome. But I don't know about a school sponsored club.
And Micah Dyer, same question to you. Should Christian clubs be allowed as school-sponsored clubs on high school campuses?
Yeah. At the end of the day, I believe in the rights of students. And I think students have the right to organize a club on campus before or after school. My freshman and sophomore year was a member of the Gay Straight Alliance Club at my high school. And then we got word, our admin was like, we don't really want this right now. The district is, there's things going around, there's this and this, and we don't want the controversy. And so I think it was my right to be a member of that club at my high school. And it was the right of the students to organize that club. And then we had to end it because of different, all these situations. And so there is a Christian club on campus at my high school. And I think we have to trust our high school students that they are informed and that they are their own people who can enter into spaces that they would like. And I trust my fellow classmates, if they would like to attend Christian Club to learn more about what it means to be a Christian, then they have that right to attend Christian Club after school. And I think schools are a unique place where our students can express themselves in a multitude of different ways. Their parents might not be accepting of them at home because they're a member of the LGBTQ plus community. So then they go to school and they have the right to express themselves in the GSA club after school. I think that's another amazing facet of our public schools. And so I think, like I said at the beginning, students have the right, and I absolutely trust our students and I trust young people to make decisions that are best for them and to be able to express themselves and learn about different things that they would like to.
Great. Okay. So we do have a few questions. That was one of the questions coming from one of our attendees. Let's go to something more maybe happy. Because I'm really excited about the new department. So Jessica is asking the question, the new department, community education, which I believe at your last meeting or the meeting before, I think it was the last meeting, y'all approved somebody to take on that role. Definitely a meaty role, but definitely important. So Jessica says, the new department, community education, will make a huge difference with the national agendas currently confusing and disinforming our community. So somebody spoke earlier about combating disinformation in the community and how that can be frustrating. So the idea behind this new department, it sounds like, is that it's going to kind of help to stop with the rumor mongering and maybe help with the actual problem solving. So what are the top 2 to 3 issues that you would like to see the new team take to the community? And this time we are going to start with David Sandoval. You're going to go first. So let me say that again, just because it was very long. The new department, community education, will make a huge difference with the national agendas currently confusing and disinforming our community. What are the top 2 or 3 issues that you'd like to see the new team take to the community?
Top two issues. I think for me, it's this role is kind of what I stated earlier when we're talking about the bond and being able to pass the bond. I think, I think one of the main issues that I see, again, in my 8th year, being on the board through COVID and then principal through, or president through COVID, and then, some of the kind of the social wars that we've been going through. But for me, it comes down to everybody having a conversation stemming from the same data and research, right? And I think that would be really a major, I guess, out of the gate component or part of their scope of work to ensure that these conversations, when had, are taking place, again, with that same information. I think that would obviously, help a lot, as we navigate some of the misinformation that's out there, right? So, I think for me, for the most part, it's that, and just making sure that we're all working, from the same data and research, and being able to have open conversations. And, I think I think it helped actually when we were going through COVID and we had these community meetings to talk about what we're doing as a district, what the next steps are. And it dissipated, a lot of the contention that was taking place in our boardroom. So I think continue to do that, and moving people in a direction that where they're willing to visit classrooms and understand what's really going on in the classroom and see the excellence that takes place. But everybody having a conversation stemming from the same data research, I think that would be a critical component of this seat right out of the gate.
Yeah, I never really imagined that in my timeline on this earth, that one of the things that I'd have to worry about is that, we would be able to share the same reality, but here we are. So I think that's probably a good way to prioritize. Same question for you, Micah. What are the top 2 to 3 issues that you'd like to see the new community education team take to the community?
Yeah, I'm super excited about this program when I heard about it at the last board meeting. One of the main focuses of my campaign is ensuring we return to this idea of our community neighborhood schools. That really should serve not just our K-12 learner, but should serve our entire community with a variety of different resources. And David mentioned it earlier, is we shouldn't just be talking to our community when we need to get their vote for bonds and overrides. We should be talking to our community all of the time about the amazing programs that we have within our district. And a few of the things like that we're doing now is the Retiree Leadership Academy. I think I got the name right. And I think it's an amazing program that I've heard raving reviews.
Micah, real quick, there is, when you speak, there is a strange, like, choppy sound with the audio for some reason. It didn't exist before, but it exists now. So I don't know if you have maybe a microphone plugged in or something. Huh, that's weird. Okay.
Still choppy?
It's still a little choppy. Yeah. Very strange. I don't know why. Nothing on my end has changed. So I don't know why it's like that. I guess we're just gonna have to go ahead and bear with it. So go ahead and finish. I'm so sorry. We'll make sure you have enough time.
Okay. Yeah, I'll finish and then I'll see if I can try to adjust for the next few questions. But yeah, I think our community should really talk about the amazing programs that we have within our district. And what I always like to mention is that we should be reaching out to our community to invite them to all of the amazing arts that we have within our schools. Invite them out to our choir concerts and our band concerts and the amazing theater programs that we have at our high schools, and the amazing arts programs that we have at our elementary schools. I think that's a really great way to showcase all of the amazing things happening. One last thing that I'll highlight too is that when I knock on doors or when I talk with somebody and they might hear in the national media students students are being indoctrinated in the classroom, or this is happening in the classroom, or that. So then I really am in this unique position to say, I'm in the classroom and have been since kindergarten for the past 13 years, and that is not happening. And really just kind of, breaking through that, all of the misinformation that they've received is really, really crucial to move forward within our district. Thanks for bearing with the sound.
Yeah, and if you can fix it, go ahead and try to do that. And if not, maybe like leaving and coming back will work, but it wasn't there before, but everybody's saying that there's a sound issue there. You have no idea. I normally have lots of tabs open. I don't have any tabs open right now, so I know it's not me either. And I can't explain, this is why we need good science teachers like Melissa, because I can't explain like sound waves and stuff like that. So you all gonna have to figure it out. Okay, so Melissa, same question to you.
I'll just start by saying that I was super excited to see who was hired for the position of the director of community education, because she is a dynamo and will do fantastic things in Peoria. I'm gonna kind of echo what David and Micah said. And, I would love to see that eventually that we get things like, I know that the Retiree Leadership Academy within Peoria kind of replaced the fall and spring field trips that we've done, where, the public gets to go tour a couple of campuses, go through classrooms, see what kids are doing. But ultimately, that's, I think, the best way to kind of counter any disinformation. Like Micah said, you go to the door and they say, oh, students are being indoctrinated. And I always invite people, come into my classroom, come see what's going on. And then they're going to see, wait, none of the things that they're hearing about in national media, none of the negativity is actually happening in the classroom. And people are always amazed when they can see kind of what my students can do, because education has changed since I was in school. And I know that that's always a topic when I talk to parents. It's changed a lot. And so people can be amazed about what can truly be done in our schools now, just with the fact that technology, the way that we use it in our classrooms, the way that students are savvy in different ways than I was when I was a kid. So we can do different things. So I would love to see the community education bring back some more of those visits. Ultimately, down the road, I would love to see, working together between using the community education department to kind of work together between the community and the school to do things like host, conversational Spanish, conversational English, to help the community kind of learn to get to know one another. There's ways that we can do that. City of Peoria has had some great recreation programs. Well, we have some fabulous, dance, art, PE teachers that maybe part of bringing the community into the schools is kind of showing them here's kind of some of the lessons our kids do, and finding ways to incentivize those teachers when they do those particular things, but opening up our doors and showing them just the amazingness that goes on within the schools, and how, I'm always blown away going to like the arts festivals or any of our concerts, going to athletic events, because wow, our kids have some talent. Going to seeing anything that's going on at CTE, go Cobra Commanders, you're seeing any of that is fantastic. And we just need more of our community to see it.
Yeah, when I was on the school board in the Creighton School District, we had a community council that met quarterly. And it was a really great way to, like, we would have, and we were very small. I mean, 9 schools. So, the tables, we would get pizza from like a local pizzeria, and we would have our most engaged like families and teachers and classified staff to come, and we'd all just sit and break bread and learn about things. They made us do math one time, and it was really stressful. But it was like a great way for all of us to sit around a table, get to know each other a little better, practice my broken Spanish with people who wanted to practice their broken English, and then we had to solve a problem together. And for me, that's the kind of stuff that really matters, and that's how you combat some of the nonsense that we're all facing. So thank you so much. All right, this is, I would say, probably, I think this might be the last question. Well, it is the last question coming from our audience. So if there is anybody else who would like to ask a question, feel free to type it in the chat or in the Q&A. But this is a really great question, especially considering what's been going on in Peoria. And Micah will be the first person to answer this. How can the board members better support teachers during board meetings when they are being called evil, groomers, indoctrinators, etc.? If you're on the board, what would you do as a board member? And Micah, let's hope this works. You're going to go first.
Yeah, does it sound better? I tried to switch to the, okay,
Much
awesome.
better. Yeah.
Okay, the question, how can we kind of combat when things at the dais are happening where we're attacking our educators for whatever? Okay. Yeah, I think we need to, at the end of the day, school board members are advocates for public education, advocates for students, and advocates for our staff. And so we need to call it out when it happens. And we cannot let it go on. We need to have a president and a clerk of our governing board who will gavel down board members who are saying things or attacking different educators or our students. And this, I'm assuming the question was asked because this has happened in Peoria Unified a number of times the past few years. And it is sad to see. And it is sad as when I attend those meetings as a student, and then I have to go back and tell all my classmates that that is what happened. And those were that's what the adults in the room are doing. And let me tell you, every single one of my classmates says, we could do better. And it's so true. We can do better. And I think our governing board members need to do better. It is not okay ever for there to be an educator sitting in the room and there to be governing board members on the dais 5 feet in front of them, saying their name and saying that they are not good educators, that they're indoctrinating our students or whatever it might be, because our educators show up every single day for our students. It is not an easy job. And so I think we need to be rewarding every single one of our educators and not calling them out. And I see in the chat, public speakers doing the same. That is not the space. Public governing and the governing board is not required to open up public comment to the public. That is not something that's required in Arizona law. I think it's crucial that we hear from the public at all of our board meetings, but they have freedom of speech, but they do not have the freedom of the platform to spew nonsense or hate towards our educators. So like I said at the beginning, it is the role of the governing board, and as the governing board member, I will ensure that if a governing board member or a member of the public is harassing, attacking, or speaking false claims to any staff member, to member of the public, or to a student, that it will be ended when it is started, and that they will be gavelled down, and it cannot be accepted within the walls of PUSD.
Thank you, Micah. Same question to you, Melissa. How can board members better support teachers during board meetings when they are being called evil, groomers, indoctrinators? What would you do?
Yeah, short answer would be that's a point of order. I mean, it is an attack on staff, and attack on staff that comes without evidence. Like I don't know, as a scientist, a person of science, at making some crazy claim without evidence is, to me, one, that's not the place for it. If stuff were actually happening like that, there are SROs on our high school campuses. There are SLOs that work amongst our elementary schools. That's the place to go. The governing board meeting is not the place if there were an actual problem. To me, I see this as a student safety issue. So if you're perpetually using the words groomer and pedophile in referring to teachers, those words become so saturated that they lose their meaning. And so that if I hear students saying groomer or pedophile because they're seeing it all the time in the media, immediately is that true? Are they repeating words that they heard at the school board meeting that was broadcast all over YouTube and the students have free access to it? And then it becomes, well, if you're saying it all the time, then who's going to believe someone when they say that someone is grooming, if someone's a groomer, actually grooming a child, or someone is a pedophile? Like those are serious words that should be kept for their actual purpose. You know, we talked about comprehensive sex ed. Our students should learn and our staff should learn what what grooming is so that we know to avoid it. But if we're constantly saying at board meetings, then again, it loses all meaning. And I honestly think it should be shut down. And when people say crazy things at board meetings, I would love to see board members turn to somebody. They can't obviously can't respond, but they can turn to somebody in the cabinet and ask a question to clarify while the public is sitting there watching.
Yes. Okay, next, David Sandoval, same question to you. How can the board members better support teachers during board meetings when they're being called evil, groomers, indoctrinators, and what would you do?
Yeah, no, everything that both Mike and Melissa just stated. You know, every board member has an obligation to maintain the decorum in that room. You know, while I respect all opinions and perspectives, you know, I also respect all those in attendance, our teachers, staff, and making sure that we have a space where our students feel comfortable coming to board meetings. Because again, they're the most important voice in our district, right? That said, I mean, I know a few things, and with me, you know, during COVID, you know, I reduced our public comment to 30 minutes. And then most recently, we just moved it towards the end of the board meeting so we can get through recognitions and other areas that involve the community. But that said, you know, that's right. I mean, if an individual or individuals, whether it be board or those speaking, come with objectives, subject matter that is more focused on demeaning an individual, our staff, employee groups, namely our teachers, you know, it is unacceptable. I mean, for me, what's most unfortunate is, you know, when I was first elected to the governing board, we had one officer at the board meeting. And now, you know, we had to increase, which takes away resources from the district, right, from a financial perspective. And it's just, yeah, it's just unfortunate. But yeah, I agree. You know, we as a board need to make sure that all of our teachers, staff, students, et cetera, all those in the room, you know, that nobody deserves to be called names, and namely those individuals who wake up every day to lift up our youth, who are steadfast in that initiative and who are invaluable to our society.
I'm just really loving the whole conversation today that is so normal, and like these are the things that we should all be focused on in public education. And so once again, I just want to say I so appreciate the diversity of the candidates of this district and your commitment in various ways to the people in your community. With that, well, first off, I want to just say a few things about our organization. I mentioned at the very beginning that we do have a Friday speakers series that takes place every Friday at noon. It's virtual, so anybody can attend. We post them later on YouTube so that we can, and again, we have speakers from all over the country in various fields of expertise, politicians, journalists, educators, leaders of nonprofits, etc. Yes, thank you so much. So you can see right there, we've got some great programming that's going to be coming up. We always have really good programming. We also will continue this forum format. So if you are interested in learning more about a particular district in Arizona, please let us know. I also want to invite, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. Despite what people think, we are nonpartisan. We focus only on the issues. But I'd really like to give all of our candidates today an opportunity to throw into the chat, and make sure you click on everyone. So if you've got a website that you would like to share with our members, or your social media pages or whatever, please feel free to throw those into the chat real quick. And then I would say probably you can go ahead and prepare yourselves for your closing statement. I don't really see any other questions coming up. We had as many as 12 attendees at one point, so that's pretty great for our first candidate forum. And again, such diversity of opinions, such diversity of experience. I'm not going to talk about your ages, but there is a diversity of age here that I also really like to see. So, I mean, for me personally, I just want to say thank you so much. It is these days, especially kind of a dirty, thankless job to step up for your community and a governing board position. Let's remind everybody that these are volunteer positions. I love when people go to board meetings and say, I pay your salary. No, you don't, because I don't get a salary. So thank you so much to the three of you for stepping up and for serving in the many capacities that you serve your community. All right. And I believe that we are going to go ahead and end this forum with your closing statement. And it looks to me that Melissa Gurmscheid is going to be the first one. So go ahead, close us out, Melissa. Tell us why we should all vote for you.
Oh, absolutely. So I will bring to the board an active classroom teacher perspective, which I think Peoria needs someone who can talk about what's going on in the classroom, especially when we talk about combating that disinformation. You know, being able to bring my experience as a teacher in Peoria, as a parent of kids who went through schools in Peoria, and as a resident of Peoria for 23 years. I'd do some quick math there. 23 years. You know, I can talk a lot about what is going on in the classrooms and definitely what is not going on in our classrooms. And, you know, as a person of math and science, I will always bring logic and data to my decisions on the board. And so, you know, I'm just going to plug my website because I can. So melissag4pusd.com. And I would love to talk to more people throughout the community and hear your thoughts about the election.
Great. And next will be David Sandoval. Close us out. Tell folks why they should be voting for you.
Yeah, thank you. And again, thank you for organizing this forum. I really appreciate it. Yeah, for me, I mean, like I said, I'm in my 8th year, and you know, I am honored to sit in a seat that serves an organization whose associates come to work every day to lift up the human lives, the young lives that we serve here in Peoria Unified. Look, like I said, I've been the president of the governing board for 4 consecutive years, just finished my 4th year last year through its most contentious times. And, you know, we've had some very colorful board meetings. Without question, we continue to move good work forward within the district. That said, I'll continue to serve with curiosity, without judgment, continue to choose courage over comfort, and you know, just value the lives of teachers and staff that make such a difference in the world and our society, and continue to serve those young lives that, for me, inspire me every day when I visit a classroom. So yeah, I definitely would love to continue to sit in the seat for another term, serving the community, our families, our teachers, students, and staff, and you know, continue to do so in a way that you know, is with objectivity, with you know, the research and data, that accurate research and data. Thank you, and then, you know, just you know, again, make informed decisions that continue to stay centered around student success, teacher success, staff success. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Sandoval. Okay, and finally, close us out, Micah Dyer. Let us know why the folks in Peoria should vote for you.
Yeah, I think tonight the three of us have painted a very clear picture on what the future of Peoria Unified could look like. And so in closing, I thank you, Secular Arizona, Jeanne for moderating, Melissa and David for being here, and everyone for watching. It's crucial that we're all involved within the future of our district. Like I said in the beginning, I grew up here in Peoria, Arizona, and I'm a current senior within our district. I've navigated our halls, and now I hope to be your future governing board member. And throughout that path, through my various leadership roles, I have learned about the amazing power of education. And so my candidacy is not just about seeking a position on the board, but about advocating for our students, our parents, and our educators, who are the heart and soul of our district. And throughout my time within the district, I've had the privilege, like I said before, in serving in various leadership roles. I talked about the 4 focus areas that my campaign is centered around. Students need to be at the focus, and we need to empower them. We need to return to community engagement, ensure that our teachers and our educators are being recognized for the amazing work that they're doing. And we need to level the playing field between the North and the South. And by doing those things, we'll become a student-centered and community-engaged district. And so I think as we move forward, it's been mentioned tonight, our district's motto is every student, every day prepared to shape tomorrow, when I learned that back in kindergarten. And I think that really shares our collective commitment to ensuring that each and every student receives the support, resources, and opportunities they need to succeed. So I invite each and every one of you that are watching to join this journey with me toward a brighter future for Peoria Unified School District. You can go to micahforpeoria.com. I have knocked thousands of doors because it is crucial that we are talking to people in our community, and we, in my campaign, will knock thousands of more doors, because that is how we're going to win the hearts and souls of the residents within Peoria Unified. That is how we're going to turn the tide within our district, because we need to be in the community, we need to be knocking doors, and we need to be making the outreach. So with that, we're going to create an educational environment where every student is valued and empowered and prepared to make a positive impact on the world. So thank you so much, and let's shape the tomorrow one student at a time.
Fantastic. Once again, candidates, thank you so much for helping us kick off this 2024 election cycle. You know, school board candidates don't get a lot of airtime, and so we wanted to do our little bit of a part in a role that's so important, and for issues that are so important to our members. So thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy schedules. I know you're probably eager to knock doors or make phone calls, or maybe even just like spend time with your family, because being a candidate is not an easy job. So thank you for stepping up. Thank you for showing up. Thank you to everybody who showed up tonight. And let us know. I haven't put anything on the schedule yet, but we're also just kind of waiting to see who rises to the top. So we will have a new candidate forum coming up in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So pay attention, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.